Yeah, you would consider a shot at chance. You know, whatever, like, you make so that's the whole. The legend. What's that? You just,
If we do,
is it that time?
So it is time, 7:00. So let's call this workshop to order. We have Dave Schaefer, the James Home PC manager, engineer Bob George, and then the chairwoman, PSD, and commissioner. And without further ado, let's see, you know everybody here? Oh yeah. Councilman Bowles. Yeah. All right. He's met us. We actually had some presentations about 2 weeks ago.
Right. So, good evening, and thank you for coming to this workshop. So I can officially beg you for money. Begging is never beneath me when it's for a worthy cause. And I think the restoration efforts for the James Island Creek watershed are certainly a worthy cause. So don't feel special. I've been begging for money from anybody that will listen. So in fact, the district applied for a $500,000 grant last fall, September, to the Rural Infrastructure Authority. Unfortunately, that did not work out. So much has changed since last September for the Rural Infrastructure Authority. And I'm sure you're aware, they had a whole pot of money that was pushed down from the Fed, about $900 million that aligns with the watershed restoration efforts. And so we want to be, the district wants to be in a much more competitive position when the RIA opens the application for that $900 million. So to give you perspective, about 55 to 60% of that 900 million is dedicated to large systems. So that's customers that are 30,000 customers and above. So your North Charleston Sewer District, Charleston Water System, 45% of that funding is dedicated to smaller systems, less than 30,000 customers. And that's what we'll be competing for with the Rural Infrastructure Authority. And so I've been begging for money multiple levels from the state. So most recently, the district submitted a preliminary application to South Carolina THEC for grant funding through their 319H program. And everybody that has been participating on the James Island Creek Task Force meetings understands with the prior year, the waterkeeper applied for 319 funding. Basically, they were told, you can't apply for this 319 funding because DHEC hasn't approved your watershed management plan. Then last summer, DHEC approved the watershed management plan. And then the next opportunity to apply for 319 funding was an initial proposal in March, which was submitted. So we got very candid feedback on 319. And they said, you're not getting the $2 million you're asking for. We have very competitive applications this year, and you're probably getting $250,000 max. We said, okay. So then that kind of changes our approach to how to start the sewer expansion project. And so Bob George has had multiple conversations with SCDHEC representatives. They were very honest, forthcoming, and basically what Bob is going to talk about is some of the more technical aspects of what it is we're doing now, based on the full proposal that is due in early June. So that means I have to take it to the commission for the approval of the application next Monday, the 23rd of May. That's the regular commission meeting. So I said multiple levels of the state. So besides DHEC 319, say the best news for last. And late last week, the 11th of May, the House amended budget 5150 with many legislators to thank for doing this. We also have Mr. Kyle Michelle, who is the district's lobbyist in Columbia. And his persistence and our persistence paid off. So this is the House budget, is a 39-page document. And on page 38, tucked away in section 81, is the yellow highlighted good news, where the projects have been identified. And you will see in there, James Island Watershed Restoration Pollution Mitigation, $1 million. So that's good news. And so what happens now is we have, fingers crossed, nothing changes, the Senate reconciles, sends it to the governor, and the governor signs that into law. And so you will see that it's vague, that is not a earmark appropriation for James Island Public Service District, and that will flow directly to this project, all right? And the district is taking the lead in being able to make this sewer expansion project a reality. So members of council will remember last August, we did the budget amendment, and this was the $1,854,630 associated with water quality sewer infrastructure projects. And so what I'm trying to be able to do is submit a full proposal to SCDHEC 319 with a proposed letter of commitment signed by the mayor for $320,000. And so that $320,000, Bob will get into kind of like the preliminary estimates, but Oak Point Road is one of the three. So we got Oak Point Road adjacent to $320,000. And so that's in here. In this letter, this is that's about 17.25% of that 1.8 million figure. And what that does is really helps us get through the soft costs associated with the preliminary engineering, design engineering, surveying, permitting, everything so that we have concrete things to put in our application to RIA to be able to get the rest of this project funded. So think holistically, we have 1.8 that is committed to the town for the sewer expansion project, and that's up the Hill Road, Oak Point, and Julian Clark. So because we're not going to get $2 million from SCDHEC 319 money, we're not going to be able to start with a chunk of Julian Clark. Instead, Oak Point Road is 15 properties. And you got 10 within the town, you got 5 within the city, CWS territory. So Bob, George, and I are taking this show on the road. Tomorrow, we go meet with CWS, and we say, Hill, how do we get you in this vehicle today? You got 5, we got 10, we want to go in this together. It's kind of unprecedented because having PSC and CWS in the same room about going in on a project together has not happened historically. And so Ken Hill has been very receptive. He sits in on all the task force meetings. Mark Klein is the assistant CEO and is going to take over from Ken in August. He's been very receptive. They want to see something happen too. But they know we have to go into this project together, multi-jurisdictional spirit of cooperation to get these people off the septic and onto sewer. And so this is the letter, the 320,000, and I'm very hopeful that we can submit this letter of support with our application before the end of, before the deadline in June, so that we can move forward with that. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Bob.
Deadline in June.
Third, you got it, Friday the 3rd. I know, and they don't give you much, March, they told us at the end of April, hey, go get this full proposal. So Bob has been very, studiously go through the full proposal, which takes a lot more, Excel spreadsheets and a lot more, funding, requirements and how you're going to use the money, because 319 flows from the EPA. And so the EPA, any federal money, that's going to have strings, that's going to have reporting requirements, and that's what we got Bob here to kind of explain.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
It's kind of a good transition here because it has to do with CWS board.
Yep.
They're under the same kind of requirements as PSD and we are with respect to water quality in the creek. Is that correct?
Kent Hill is a member of the task force. Ken, Dave said something I think needs to be reiterated. There's never been an opportunity, and I go come back. There's never been an opportunity for the PSD and talking to Wilson to cooperate on much of anything. It's always been a little bit more adversarial, a little bit like the town and the city of Charleston. That Ken and I have known each other probably 30 years. He's retiring in August. He and I had a long conversation about this because of the 15 lots in Oak Point. They got 5 and the town's got 10. Of those 15 lots, there are 8 residences that are in the town and 4 in the city. Ken and I talked about the fact that this project is almost tailor-made to try to put something together to work on a lot of other places on this island that have the same problem. We can just pick a subdivision that doesn't have sewer. Battery Island, Tilbury Point, great point right there. This would be a, I don't want to call it a problem, I think it's more to it, it's more medium, is what I think. Ken wants to go out with a bang, so to speak, he's going to retire in August. And he really wants to see it work. And so tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning is a very important meeting because he has got to basically sell his senior engineering staff and his commission on this project. But they're already committed. They're committed to the watershed and they're part of that. The city of Charleston's part of it. So
What's the nature of their commitment to it? Are they being compelled or is it something that they?
no, they're not.
Garrett, the MS board is the people responsible for stormwater, not wastewater. So actually, the PSD and CWS is not under the order of DHEC to clean up the river. Who's under responsibility is the town of James Island, because they're in our jurisdiction. Charleston County is the unincorporated areas in the city of Charleston. And while CWS is somehow owned by the city of Charleston, it's actually their stormwater operation and their general fund budget, not the CWS part. And the PSD is not under any obligation. They are regulated under a different set of rules.
I have a question. So we're talking about moving people from septic to sewer, right?
Very old malfunctions, septic.
And do we have documentation of those?
That's right. And I can go into that. That's all in the water. It's all in this watershed study. And it's well documented. People call it home contamination, well documented.
I totally agree with that. My question is, do we know it's coming from the septic tanks? That's my question.
Well, I can tell you right there, if you get one duck in that creek, that's gonna be people call on it. And so who's to say, other than doing dye tests, doing a rainfall event, doing a dye test and seeing if the runoff, and the duck topographically it does, it flows in the creek. That happens to be a single small area that you can, and I would tell you, isolate in many ways. One of the problems with that area right now is it is isolated. And Charleston Water System knows just as well as James Island knows that to go in and put conventional sewers in there would be very expensive. Right now, it would be very expensive to do it with a low pressure system because it is literally isolated. It's right on the creek. Those old septic tanks, if you tried to put one in there now, with the soil conditions, I will tell you, what we could do 20, 30 years ago, we couldn't do.
The reason I'm asking that question, I'm not trying to be
Excuse me?
adversarial. I said, the reason I'm asking that question, I'm not trying to be adversarial, but we have just said we're gonna spend all this money to check all these septic tanks to ensure that they're functioning. So my question is, if they are functioning and they're functioning properly, then why would we change them? I guess.
I would go back to what the mayor had said about the MS4 requirements. These areas have been identified by the state as contributing areas and contributing sources to non-point source runoff contamination in the James Island Creek watershed. That's the best I can do for you right now as an answer.
Thank you.
That is a very good study. It's well documented. It was done by a highly qualified firm. And those three areas, Long Point to over
Up
the.
there.
Up the hill.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Those three areas, particularly Clarkston, it is really, if you think back and you've been around this island a while, those are really old subdivisions. And they predate really when James Island PSC had the sewer business. For Clarkston. So, the best answer I can give you is that the state and local water keepers have documented the fecal sources in it. The study supports them. The MS4, the objective of MS4 is to remove the septic tanks within the watershed that contribute to it. Now, there's a whole lot of urban runoff, non-point source runoff, going in James Island Creek. James Island Creek is, we can think of it as a creek going right over Stone River. But the truth of the matter is, there's very poor flushing in the west. So whatever buildup of contaminants, and I will tell you one of the biggest ones we're not even talking about now, that is curb litter. Automobile exhaust and everything from the roadway runs off into that creek. So there's a lot of things out there, but fecal coliform is the one that we use to classify water. Charleston Harbor, and I'm speaking from memory, is SC.
So, excuse me. So Robert George is sort of prepared to give us details about the proposal on
Okay.
their, how they would expand the sewer.
Okay.
Whether we actually need sewer or not, the question you're asking is not something that Robert George was really going to hear about.
I can give you an answer. I can give you the check, but it's not for the board.
Did you, so you seen the watershed study?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's basically what we have, and I don't think it's completely open and shut. And, as you mentioned, we're doing, testing of septic tanks, and we don't have that information. So that's where we are on that. And I don't think,
And I'm not trying to be contentious
Oh, I
or
know.
anything else, and I so appreciate you being here. The reason I was asking was because if we have to be pressed to make an answer like today, and we're doing the study, then like, wait, how do we? But
we need an information.
Well, the only,
Okay, great.
I'll go back and tell you what days, the deadline, can I give you about 2 months background on where we stand, DHEC?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. DHEC, the PSD submitted an initial proposal, which was fairly difficult to put together. Because all of the guidelines are brand new, and frankly, a lot of folks who wrote it didn't really know what they were writing. It'd be great for a $10 million project, it's real hard to scale down to something. Well, the 319 project has got $1.25 million this year. James Allen PSD, although we submitted the initial proposal for Clark's Point, we were selected to submit the final proposal. Had a long conversation with Shay
All right.
McCarty about where we stood. And she said, there's 7 out there. All of them rank from the standpoint of need higher than the application. The reason is, they're talking about sewer overflows and things like that. They won't, not necessarily septic tanks. Of the 6 that, other than the districts, of those 6, the average grant request size was $250,000. And Shay said, if we go over that, we got a big chance of losing. We talked at length. They had really is very aware of the James Allen Creek watershed problem, and they want to do something with it. So she's been extremely helpful, almost as a partner. And she said, scale it way down, scale it down, give us something we can fund. And so we selected the one project, and we also wanted to get Charleston Water Systems in this. It's a great opportunity. We got to do it one day. We got to try. And if we can get them into something where we can end up with an MOU for other projects, then that gives us an open door we can go through. So where we are, I can tell you that doing a project like this is expensive from the standpoint of how much it costs per resident. Unfortunately, if it's gravity sewer and pump station, it'd be more. There's just no way to get to that little isolated pocket, except trying to do it in the manner that we're proposing to do it. It's the least disruptive of infrastructure.
So, how are you proposing to do it?
It would be a low pressure system, the same way that we would do the artillery point. It would be done with a small force main system and grinder pumps, individual grinder pumps. Excuse me?
I'm sorry, I didn't know about artillery point.
Julian Clark would be the same way as Julian Clark. So low pressure
So it's,
system and up down.
explain what that means.
Each house would be provided with a separate pump system that's a little bit larger than a 55-gallon drum. It would intercept the flow from the house sewer to the septic tank. The PSD has done several of these on the southwestern part of the island now. On each side of Folly Road from Brimble down to Battery Island and over on the west side of Battery Island. This party has several of these in place. They work well. It's newer technology. It's getting better every day. But each individual resident would have its own pump. The district would charge a flat fee to provide that service per month. And that little pump is, if you can think of the garbage grinder in the sink, it's about twice the size of that garbage grinder pump, height-wise, but the bottom of it looks a lot like a garbage grinder, because that's what it is. It grinds up the wastewater in very small fine particles and pumps it through a small pipe. And it'll end up pumping it into a gravity sewer.
So why is this better than running a gravity system?
Because gravity system, thank you very much. A gravity system in an area And, Schooner Road should perfectly to put gravity in an area like that, you're gonna be dealing with high water table, poor soils, you're gonna be tearing everything up and digging trenches 8, 9, 10 foot deep. And you're gonna be spending a whole lot more money, taking a whole lot longer time to do it. That plus the fact you have to put in, even the smallest James Allen PSD pump station has to have an 8 foot down the wet. And it has to be flood-proof, duplex pumps, control panel mounted up on a ride by Harvard, and look at one. But we're talking about a conventional system to serve 15 lots.
And so,
Wouldn't be cost effective.
so conventional system is served at cost effective. What is the total cost of the Oak Point Road, extending sewer to the houses?
Say it one more
What
time.
is the total cost of extending sewer into the Oak Point area?
With the grinder pumps.
Okay.
Yes.
$726,576 by a schematic estimate. I can tell you, and he had to tell you, and everybody else can tell you, including the Charles Water system. That means you're gonna be spending about $50,000 per service.
So you're asking the town to provide about half of that.
That's the way it breaks down, and we're making an assumption here based on tomorrow's meeting. Where the town share would be $318,800.
Yeah, it's a little less.
Excuse me?
It's a little less than that.
So, do you have an estimate on what the gravity system would cost, just
Not
for
for that.
comparison?
No, we have not done that.
Because I would like to know what that would be just for comparison purposes. My concern with the grinder pump system is everything's great as long as you have electricity running the pumps. But if you don't have electricity, like in the event of a hurricane, and we have an emergency situation, that can really kind of be self-defeating for what we're trying to accomplish.
Already addressed and equipment's on hand and ready and people know how to use it. Each one of the little control panels, which is smaller than this, you can hide it behind this. It's got an umbilical plug and a switch. And the district's got several smaller generators. And they can go and serve these, just alternate between them, serve them, pump them down, and just do it with auxiliary power. The smaller stations on James Island, you can see the big ones, we got 350 kW
Yeah,
generators.
I've seen some of those big ones.
But there's a lot of small trail mounted, little generators. You can actually take a generator, you can pick up in your hand, buy some loads. When you pick up in your hand, because these things don't take that much power. And and that's really practically what you use a small.
Right.
So our gravity system, those pump stations have to run on generators.
Mhm.
And if that all fails, we just put them back there.
Well,
And to give you perspective, we have trailer mounted generators that hook to the back, you see the F-250s going around. And so we have an emergency operations plan. Obviously, if there's a hurricane, the major pump stations are gonna be on generators. The smaller ones, we're gonna be, running generators too, as well as anybody with grinder pump to keep it flowing.
There's a plan to, in the case of power failure, for extended period, to run generators.
Correct. And so that's what, we have our own supply of diesel, you know what I mean? So most of the generators are natural gas for the major stations, to hurricane proof, and then we have diesel generators as well. And then we have mobile gas generators.
Referring to the individual homeowner grinder pumps that would be installed,
Correct.
that the solution to power outages for those, extended power outages is for the CSD to bring in generators and, pump one out, pump the other out. So
and I think it's okay, it's just, we're starting with 15, but if we then go to another part of the island that also needs grinder pumps, pretty soon we're having a lot of generators that we need to service these guys in the event of an outage. And that's just my concern, is having staff to run these things and to make the rounds, to make sure that we're not coming over capacity.
Yeah, and so, sure.
I have a question, like, how long does it take to hook up a generator and then pump out that individual property?
Oh, sure, probably.
So if there aren't trees on the road and you guys can get through, then you can go 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and like in what, like, 50?
It might take you, let's just say, for instance, might take you a couple hours, someplace.
And then how often do you have to do that on the power line?
You probably do it.
So, but you need to understand that, when the power's out, you can't run your dishwasher.
That's a good point.
You're not gonna be running your washing machine and all
You're not
that.
gonna be running your washing machine, you're not gonna run your dishwasher,
Short hours.
you're not gonna be.
But you're gonna be flushing your toilets.
Exactly, that's, but you see, that's, oh, but a tremendous amount of the sewer overflow is not just flushing, it's not flushing. It's, running your washing machine, dishwasher. So, but anyway, but it's even so that way, right?
The people call for what we're concerned with, right? Not gray one. I thought we were concerned with black one,
It is Blackboard.
We are.
not gray one.
I wouldn't necessarily call it Blackboard, it goes to,
Like
second
groundwater.
plant power fields anaerobic system. So,
This is, at least it's my understanding, is what we're talking about. If you go to sewer, one possibility is the gravity sewer system. And then the sewage flows from the toilets down, just a centralized pump station, which has to run on generators with the power out. This approach is each house has a pump, as a run their pump. And what happens then if there's no power? And less sewage, and the point was that less sewage through, gray water through. So then black water is just less of it, and so it doesn't need to be pumped out as much as normally would be the case if we had power.
and you have a good point, that when you're without power, if your house is without power, you don't hear a whole
So
lot. It's kind of hard to take a cold shower.
it is for me too, but I haven't finished.
I've done
My question is, so let's say you're not running the dishwasher, you're not running the washing machine, you're not doing any of that, but you're in your house, it's a hurricane, what is, and you've got 4 people in your house, how long do you think before you have to go pump out the grinder?
Well, if you.
Because you're just going to that.
I got to do a little math. If you consider that most toilet flushes are 3 gallons or less in the toilets. And I would tell you that probably you're looking at 15 to 20 gallons generated per day to flush it. I'm just, that's my guess.
Okay, so 15 to 20 gallons per day per person. So multiply it times 4, that's 80 gallons per day.
It's a 50-gallon container.
It's bigger than that. It's almost.
So
Okay,
then it's once a day, and they're full. So then you'd have to have James on Casey go every day.
And I can promise you that if it were a conventional sewer system with an 8-foot down wet well, and everybody was going into that one little wet well, it only has a cycle volume of about 2 feet between high and low. It would be the same problem, not that. But we're assuming with the analysis that you and I are talking about, that everybody would be in those houses at the same time when the power's on.
So
I would be in that perspective.
if you can get it,
What we, generally plan is for, may fail, and it does have sometimes happen. We fail to evacuate, the power's off, and you be in a difficult situation. I actually think that your estimate of how much, toilet flushing goes on for a family of Anyway, I have,
Wash your hands.
Yeah, and I have a question, so if you had a functioning septic tank and a hurricane hit, how long, like, the hurricane's not gonna impact that, right?
I can tell you, standing right here, I've been in the business a long time. If a septic tank is designed properly for the soils that it's in, and we do not have a water table problem, and you have a soil that has a good, decent permeability rate, particularly horizontal hydraulic conductivity rate, where we move through the soil. And you do it right, and you pump your tank out about once a year, which people never do. That it is probably the cheapest way, if it's sited properly and designed properly, maintained, this is the cheapest way to dispose of waste. I don't think anybody in the right mind will argue that if given the proper design, proper location, proper water table, they work. They really do work. From me to you, fecal coliform bacteria here, going through a decent soil profile, there will be none for you. It doesn't take that long. Fecal coliform will die when it's flowing laterally through soil. But they are well done. When I lived in South Point, the soil was some of the best on James Island, the water table was low. And we lived there 43 years and never had a problem. I had the greenest lawn in the nation. Hope I answered.
Yes, I will.
no, it was in the context of would, our septic tanks,
Testing.
in the case of a hurricane, do they require power to operate the septic tank? And the answer was no.
I'll be glad to go into any further detail. I will tell you this, the key to this, I think, is opening that door to the.
So then it was so that, there's some fraction that, that was less than half that we would contribute, and then you anticipate the Charleston water system is gonna come up with the money.
160, so think 10, 320, 5s, 160 from CWS, and then 250 from SC DHEC 319.
And so the $1 million from the state, that's all back for.
Well, that's when that's signed into law, we're gonna be using that to be able to, that's good for multiple reasons. Is that state money, it's not ARPA money, so that counts as local match towards ARPA funding. And we're gonna be using that to be able to do Up the Hill, Oak Point, Julian Clark,
What's our?
the American Rescue.
American Rescue Plan, very early, large infrastructure, federal infrastructure.
That's the $900 million that's pushed down from the Fed.
So the
Sitting
state is requiring a local match other than our ARPA money.
Right,
Our ARPA money is the local.
Your ARPA money is federal funds. It doesn't count for local.
They said that. That doesn't make any sense. So,
I'm just telling you, that's what we look at.
who told you?
Yeah.
So
so
our ARPA money is not, or is to make up for lost revenue that we did not get because of, anyway, neither here nor there. I think that's what they for.
Well, what?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, let me clarify. What you're saying is in the federally sourced funds.
This is like the state has decided to do that for fun.
No, I think this really comes from OMB, much higher up, OMB, EPA, state and on down. If you want to really scare yourself, read the new BABA regulations. They drive you
Very much so. Like I say, our understanding is that we have free reign to spend that money as we want. And, I'm glad to say that the money we spend on this project is from something else.
I would love for the big county was doing. So it would make life a lot simpler. I'm just telling you what we were told when we asked the question. Any federally sourced funds. And the person who answered that question may or may not have been totally aware. But we were told any federally sourced.
And so if you look up on the screen there, that whole point, what Bob was saying, where you see the house on the property that is a resident that would be affected, you can count 12 of those. And then you can count the vacant properties on there. So basically there are 8 that are town with a residence on it. And then there's 2 vacant of the town. And then the city, CWS, would service 4 residents with 1 vacant property. That's the schematic, but we would install
So,
service connections at each of the vacant properties as well.
and that's typical when we install a system like this. When we did the Folly Road project, when we installed services. It's a shame, that's a good example right there, of not being able to work together. Because on the west side, the east side of Folly Road, there are several city properties that really wanted to tie in. And there was no mechanism to work through the, I would say, the administrative and legal process to do it. But we've got an opportunity. First one, others. And we got somebody who's willing on the other side to get involved. And Kim said, we'll pony up, which his words, he said, we'll pony up our share if I can get it through the commission. That's
I,
right.
I have a question, so, and forgive me because this information may have already been out there. I have a couple questions. One is, if you're in this subdivision and you're on septic and you like your system and it's functioning properly, you have to go to sewer?
There's a mandatory use ordinance in the city, mandatory use ordinance in the PSD.
So is
If
that
it's
yes?
within a certain distance of your house and gravity service or tying in this case, tying in would be practical to do. You would be given a period of time. And here's where the good part comes in.
But I'm so sorry, and forgive me, with all due respect. So what you're saying is, if I have a septic tank, if I live in this Oak Point subdivision, and the sewer comes in, then I will have to, after
And
a
a
certain
short
period of
period of
time.
time, listen.
So the town ordinance that we passed last fall requires people to attach.
Here's my other question.
So the answer is
Yes,
yes.
my other question is this, as far as the grinder pump things, I know that they're relatively new. Is that correct?
The pump and the chamber and all down after about 20 years, what's new is control mechanisms. They just keep changing them. BSD has, I'll tell you, over a dozen spares. You just pull them out and put one in.
And do we know the life expectancy for the grinder pumps and the control mechanism?
It's probably about 10, 15 years.
And then for the control the
10,
same?
15 years.
Thank you.
Just custom. Any other questions? Be glad to. Yes, ma'am.
Back before they came in, and put 2, we had a woman on Upper Hill Road. She owned 2 houses there. I think one of them was a rental. One was in the city, one was out of territory, and she was begging us for sewer service. Because what happens during a hurricane, you get a lot of rain. He just mentioned the perfect situation. If you've got, and I've done these 319 rings up in Ogden, Congo, And what they were doing, that high water table, sewage came right up in the back door.
Right up in the tree.
And you try to flush your toilet, it backs up into your house. So if you got a lot of rain and wet soil, you try to, if you got a septic tank, you try to flush that toilet, it's gonna come right back at you. And, Bill and I have a grinder pump, we don't have a generator, we've been fine. And, because you don't have to flush the toilet every time, basically. And we're very careful about that, we know our situation. And I guess we could go get a little generator if we're there for a long time, but my plan is always getting out of town. But, these people on Ryder Road, Uphill Road, two lots have begged us. And we just looked at it and says, we can't afford to run up to two little houses. And since one was in the city and one was in ours, it wasn't feasible. So we know we have two houses that are begging us.
So along these lines,
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt. I know that the town sent out a letter to residents that were potentially going to have their septic tanks examined and everything else. What kind of feedback have we gotten from residents that received that letter? I mean, are they excited about the prospect of going off septic? Are they
Really,
resistant to it? I'm just curious.
so can you speak to that, Nikki, at all?
I'm not sure if there were any residents specifically from the area.
So, well, and actually, Oak Point, but just generally, so we've gotten 15% responses. You know, so we sent out all these letters, and we asked people in the Oakland, of course, all of them. And we didn't contact anybody, you know, anybody up to just people in contact with. And we told them, you know, that they're gonna get their sewer, their septic system checked out, and they can contact us. 15% respond. And we're still working on how we're gonna, you know, the next step to tell the other 85%. You know, this is still gonna happen.
So
And then of those people, and this is just, you know, from, you know, if Mark were here, you know, we've been talking to these people. There were some, you know, people who were adamantly against it, and no trespassing on property. We've had people who contacted us and say that they have to put in a new septic system, like their septic system failed, and then when is the sewer gonna come? And, you know, let's make a decision, you know, so that they know whether they can get a sewer or a new septic. And then, you know, there are, honestly, there's a handful of people, like 2 people that talked to me that, what, we have a septic tank? No, or I can't get some. And so, but, you know, we certainly not told. To see whether, how many people want us, you know, to say, well, no.
I think that given that, I think it's probably really important that we start, once we get a little bit better handle on how we want to proceed with this, I think we need to engage the public and make sure that they're aware of our plans going forward. Because they are the stakeholders in this.
Actually, that's part of this process. It's
Yeah.
a big part of
Right.
it.
So if the town were to approve this and make this commitment, now who's responsible? Is there any way to pull the plug? No, we're not gonna do this. We changed our mind. We've got new information and we're just not gonna do it. What would be the way to do that?
Go for the project or stop.
Yeah, well, who would make that decision?
Well, what would be the factors that would contribute to that? Well, one would be immediately Charleston Water System backing out and saying, now we don't want to part. Number two would be DGAC saying, no, I'm sorry, without more local match contributing funds, we're not going to have any money. So you find out, I've got a draft copy of the final proposal in my hand, blessed a lot of the spreadsheets. But you would find out real quick, if you got a grant, then CPW was on board.
And so as part of this
I can't
process,
see
we go through the public outreach. And then the public is all up in arms, the same people say, heck, no. Is there any way to say, well, it's like too late now, we've already,
But, I'll tell you, I remember when James Allen got in the sewer system, and we got a very, very large EPA grant to buy all of the small privately maintained lagoons, lagoon systems. Lagoon out in Marsh, right there, you don't go out. Big open area, no grass growing, sparking, lagoon. But in order to get some of the federal funds, the district had to pass a use and rate resolution that had a mandatory time. And the reason for that is if you're getting USDA funds or SRF funds that have a bond issue that needs to be paid back, you've got to have the revenue to pay that debt service. So that's where the mandatory use comes in. And I would tell you, in general, it's universal for public utilities. There are exceptions, but in general, it's universal. If you can technically tie in, you're required to do so. And it's like you said, go past the ordinance. The USD's got to use some rate resolution, same thing.
so, yes, if we extend sewer, the homeowners have to connect, but that's, so on Thursday, our meeting, on Thursday, if we were to approve this commitment, is that a point of no return? Yes, we could say, I don't care what the citizens say,
I would,
because you're polluting the water, and I'm sorry, you just have to thank the sewer, because we believe the sewer will reduce the pollution, and the current system is causing too much pollution. That would be something we could do. But my question was,
And Mayor,
when's our money spent?
if I could
Yes,
tag
go
on
ahead.
to that, can we also perhaps think about it as a contingency? If we say approve it and CPW does not,
you've got.
could we do,
And sort of rate.
yeah, I know, but could we do a segmented project?
You could do a conditional approval based on a grant, based upon CWS.
Sure.
Now, this project needs a grant. This project needs CWS, just like it needs y'all.
Right.
So, I think if you're looking for insurance, that would be the way to do it. We're gonna face the same issue later on other projects. And if the town is willing to contribute on other large projects, the town share is gonna be, in all probability, a lot smaller than big projects. There's gonna be other federal funds involved. There might be grant funds, or there might be SRF funds, or there might be open market bonds.
Right. But if it's the case that we don't get some of the anticipated funding, is there a way for us to go forward with this with partial aspects of the project? Kind of
Return,
building towards the future with what we are able to.
well, the return to scale I don't know, say anything. You're not gonna be able to do little pieces of that project. It's real small. The good thing about that, these little parts on the directional drill machine, you see these guys on the side of the road, that's what we put that in. That's what put follows. You don't need large contractors who put in the 4,000, 40-foot thing under the marsh.
So in many ways, I would say this whole point is actually that, it's, compared to the big, and it's really the part much larger than, it's like, what, 180 of the house and 10 uphill, and then this is the
Up there, it's 15.
Yeah, Julian Clark is the 178, that's what we're gonna have to get.
And so we're now going forward, Julian Clark. We're going forward with this little piece and see how it works.
I think.
And it's, where historically, it's where the pollution is the strongest by bridge. And that seems to be, if there's any place that needs to go on sewer, it's where the pollution has been most serious at the Ellis Creek Bridge. Historically, the pollution has been less serious at the road, it's actually right. Here's where the
We
problem
get
is.
better flushing there too.
Also Riley Road, That's
Where's it?
Riley Road,
Riley Road.
Further up creek, literally,
yeah.
yeah.
My question is this, so thank you for your patience. If we approve this funding and reach out to the residents of Oak Point Road, and the majority of them are like, nope, our septic tanks work fine, we say no, then can we withdraw?
I think Dave would be better to answer that. I'll do
Yeah,
that.
so that's, we are moving to the not the questions that, supposed to be answered.
Let me mention one other point about Riley Road and to a lesser degree up the creek or up the hill road. That is in what's called. That's a conversation, Ken, and I don't know if that. There, if you were to present a project that had any kind of funding in it at all, and you should call to approve it on the 201, 208, talk
The Riley Road, it's not me, it seems like most of the area here is.
The reason I brought that up is because when we talked about the whole water keepers, and we're talking about code form and all that, that was.
The water keepers never tested. And we just threw in Riley Road as an extra testing point right last year. But we have gotten some during rain in 2005. And then the only time it's been tested for source, it was 78. But in the spring, we have tested for source, there was some high level stuff that tested. We have maybe a decade worth of testing at Harvey Road Bridge in Ellis Creek. And every year, Ellis Creek is Ellis Creek is too dangerous for this work. It's a persistent problem. And then last year, they did 2 tests on source and they both came in as most likely. But we do have Riley Road as a problem. But we are not going to be putting any sewer at Riley Road. It's or that area. Best we know is already sewer and Washington. But and it's not in our jurisdiction, so we're not going to worry about it anyway. That's all county and city like that. On the other side of the creek, though, is Seminole. And that's sewer. Now on the Riley Road side, it's mostly unincorporated and but it looks, it's all sewer, right? Is that correct?
Go back, I'm sorry.
I think it,
So the Central Park area, for the most part, is sewer, we guess. And but except, this Oak Point Road and up the Hill Road was for some reason left out. Years ago, right, apparently.
Yeah, and Julian Clark, to go back and sewer a neighborhood that's already septic is much more costly than putting it in with new development, right?
But Riley Road is not being developed.
No.
This sort of our neighborhood has been there for me, right? It's quasi rural. I was surprised to find that they have sewer lines running through there. Maybe they all run from Central Park Road, that's the problem.
And so the the mechanism to be able to go in, abandon the septic tank, intersect that, directional drill to the pump, to the, lateral, meaning to the connection point to the main. So the DHEC money, that 250,000, that can be used to connect the homeowner to the actual sewer main. So in here, that $250,000 can be used. We're putting in the sewer main. The DHEC money, the 250,000, can be used for connection for the homeowner, as well as you had mentioned, public outreach, used for public outreach as well.
How many people can you attach for $250,000?
I don't know what that component is. The 250,000, how many people can you connect for
It's
250,000?
every, but it's like a whole, kind of full cost, it costs nothing for the people.
It would depend. Every one of these homes, septic. You need to go out there and look and find out where the tank is. You need to look at the roof and find out where the bathroom is on the back of the house. And you need to look at, hopefully, a lot of that clean out the 5 feet. But you need to find that one, and that's where you're gonna tie in. Then you need to find a location that's convenient for the homeowner and at the same time practical and cost effective. Put that little hole in the ground and put that pump. You're gonna also go right to where the meter is, the electric meter, and you're gonna tie in at the bottom of that meter and tie in on the house side of that meter. And that's where you're gonna, most of the time, put the little tank. That's where it's gonna be. The one size doesn't fit all of this business. So you've got to be careful about people's yards, landscaping, walkways, driveways, other lines underground, water mains, might be irrigation system, might be underground power. So one size doesn't fit all. Every one of them is its own little cookie cutter.
The proposal is that, this funding, $746,565 will cover the connection to each and every house. Right.
That's a total
And
cost.
then how much of it's gonna come out of the $250,000 as opposed to public outreach or whatever. As long as the allowable expenses are $250,000 more than we have.
Right, and we will, as we go through this, Bob's putting the final touches on that proposal and, when approved, hopefully next Monday, the 23rd, obviously, we would send that to the town, to CWS. Hey, this is what we're trying to do. So that is the hope. And, if there's anything else,
You'll let us know what the PSD says tomorrow, right?
You mean?
Monday.
Monday?
Monday, yeah, and CWS is tomorrow morning. We're just taking this on the traveling road.
Well, that's a big one.
It is.
Well, it's really, CWS is really important because we joined it, we always have, and it's an opportunity to really build a relationship.
Well, it's been a parallel universe.
I agree with you there.
Right, is there any other questions? Or-
I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Like, we appreciate it.
I'm gonna grab my phone drive.
All right, so we'll call workshop. Thank you all for coming.
Jimmy Hasl's $230 million later in the pocket,
I don't want to talk about
and we open against the Panthers. I got guys coming down from Cleveland to tailgate with, and we're gonna meet up in Charlotte.
it. Well,
And we'll be.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.